Yeah, I went boogie boarding today and I got my fucking ass pummeled by some waves.
That's what you're saying.
It's a pretty shallow beach where I'm at. So you do like, I think it's called like the turtle dive, and you just like flip upside down.
Spin technique.
Yeah, and like I got a few times where I like did it and I barrel rolled and like the wave pushed me up and I was able to like keep swimming. I got a couple though where like boom, it like took my boogie board away from me and just like like pulled me like way back to the beginning. And I was just like, I gotta get all the way back out there again. All right, shall we?
Yeah, I guess let's get this going. Hold on, let me So we were going to talk about some ancient civilizations there, bud.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Did you have like a starting point in mind? This is a very impromptu podcast where it was just scheduled literally 2 hours ago. So I have no prep, but I am very interested in a lot of ancient cultures. So did you have anything specific in mind you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I have no prep either, but I always feel like the best kind of segue into it is the kind of talking about ancient Egypt and the Great Sphinx. And I forget the name of the dude, John Anthony West and Robert Shocks, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's Robert. Yeah, Dr. Robert Schoch.
Yeah, Robert Schoch. They found evidence of water erosion on like the bedrock surrounding the Sphinx. And you know, they say that, you know, that kind of water erosion would have to date it significantly further back than what you know, mainstream Egyptologists propose. Something, I don't know the exact dates off the top of my head, some like 10,000 years or something, and some people even are inclined to say maybe even 30,000 years because it's lined up with precession.
Yeah, I think it's Robert Schoch that sort of believes more that it's potentially like 33,000 BC.
Yeah.
Where I think John Anthony West and Graham Hancock point more to that like 12,300 years ago.
Yeah.
10,000, or I think 12,800. And we've been into that before. That aligns very conveniently with the evidence of like a comet-driven younger Dryas. But yeah, that I was actually thinking about having the starting point be Egypt because that's like the most obvious one. So that's perfect that you brought that up. It doesn't make sense. I mean, so what we're really talking about is the water-induced erosion around the Sphinx enclosure, not necessarily on the Sphinx itself.
Yeah.
Because the Sphinx has had multiple repairs over centuries and millennia.
Yeah.
But where you really see the evidence is in the enclosure walls around the Sphinx. I'll edit in a picture just so people can sort of see what we're talking about. But like, there's a big difference between sand erosion through wind and heavy waterfall or like watershed erosion. Sand erosion is more going to cut striations horizontally in the weaker layers of the rock, where water erosion is going to sort of create channels going vertically down the rock and find those small cracks and fissures. So that's the most poignant evidence.
And particularly like water erosion from not just like rain beating down, like, but it collecting into like little streams and creeks and stuff. So it's like, you know, how close was the river, the Nile, near to the pyramids and the Sphinxes at what date and time, right? Because that river shifts over thousands of years.
Well, and also I feel like a lot of people don't know that 12,000 years ago, the northern Africa was not the Sahara Desert that we see it today. 12,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago, during the Ice Age, it was like a lush rainforest, and received heavy rainfall consistently throughout all of those years. And then around 12,000, 11,000 years before present, that's when everything started to change, and the climate had a very dramatic shift. Meltwater pulse 1A and 1B, and that sort of just changed the geographical nature of Sahara Africa.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was the last time that there. Go ahead.
They talk about how a lot of the Indonesian islands and all those were connected to the mainland from like New Guinea all the way up to Thailand and modern day Vietnam. How that was all like all connected, and parts in Mexico were uplifted, and how England and Ireland were part of mainland Europe at that time. And so it's, you see that significant rise in seawater level, with the Younger Dryas and 1A, 1B glacial lakes floating into the oceans finally, I mean, it's just a massive geographical change in such a short span of time.
Yeah, that's part of the key, is how quickly it happened over the span of, I think, between meltwater pulse 1A and meltwater pulse 1B, it's 1,000 years, 1,200 years, somewhere in that kind of range. But when you sort of look at, if you go into Google Maps, you can sort of play with, the water level and how much water is going to sort of rise up. And when you go down 400 feet, when you see the pictures, which I'll edit in here, the pictures, or the maps, I guess, the digital maps, of what the world would have looked like if the water level of the oceans was 400 feet lower. So yeah, dramatically different.
That's cool.
Like Indonesia is.
I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, I don't know if you can do it on Google Maps, but I know you can play with some digital sort of maps and be able to sort of adjust it around.
What the fuck with that?
Yeah, but like essentially all the islands of like the Philippines and Southeastern Asia, if you bring the water level down 400 feet, those are just mountaintops on the continental shelf. And yeah, even like Florida, when you pull the water down, it goes from being pretty small and pretty skinny to like a nice, good fat chode. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It gets, way thicker. And that's one thing that, Graham Hancock has brought up a lot is, and Randall Carlson as well, that's where societies generally always developed, is along the coastlines and along the mouths of rivers for trade purposes, number one. Also, you have essentially a never-ending food source with the ocean. It makes sense.
Relatively temperate and manageable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if that's where typically most, modern civilization, according to most historians now, started in between the Tigris and the Euphrates River in the Fertile Crescent, because you have access to water, you have access to food, you have access to be able to sort of, interact with other civilizations that are forming. If all that water, or if all that, all that land, or I guess that rock that was once land and is now covered with oceans, there's no way you'd be able to sort of see any remnants, because the ocean will just destroy everything.
Yeah.
I went on a long tangent and a long rant.
That was awesome.
And I don't remember what the start of it was.
The rise of sea water levels and where we were, how the fact that most civilizations tend to be on the outskirts of the oceans, where land meets ocean. So that dramatic shift in only 400 feet, seeing the big geographical or geological shift, what kind of sunken cities are out there. And there are ancient sunken cities out there. There's a few in the Mediterranean, there's a few in the Yucatan, there's a few off the coast of India. there's a few Roman cities that are sunken. And so, I mean, and those ones are, only a couple millennia old, but even still, like what could have been there. And like, if you think about, how early cities were probably made of mostly, stone and rock, like how much of that is going to erode or get washed away, and not really ever become discovered.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of we don't know what we don't know, and we'll never be able to find it out. But yeah, the ancient Roman cities, that at least sets a precedent that this kind of thing is possible. But also, I've seen some stuff that there might be, lost ruins buried deep within the sand of the Sahara Desert, and stuff that we may never find because of, the climate that we're in, like the Sahara Desert.
Shifting tides, shifting sands. Yeah.
Yeah. The Sahara Desert isn't going to be going anywhere anytime soon. And we're probably not going to, spend the time and, do LiDAR readings of the entire Sahara, which is the size of the entire continental United States. That is also kind of brings up something that Graham Hancock brings up in his last book. I can't remember what it's called, but something of the Americas.
America Before.
America Before.
I've read that book. Great one.
Yeah.
It's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's the same kind of idea of he points to a lot of evidence and groundwork and henges in the Amazon rainforest. And it's the same kind of idea of, instead of, all the stuff that might be in the Sahara, which actually I do want to come back to that. I'm going to write that down because I've seen something that points to Atlantis being located somewhere in Saharan Africa. We'll circle back to that.
Cool. I like that.
Yeah. But
Okay.
Graham Hancock points to a lot of evidence that, it's highly likely that there very well could have been a advanced civilization in a somewhat advanced that's totally lost in the Amazon, just because of how brutal the Amazon forest is and how quickly
man. I mean,
overgrown.
they're finding evidence of ancient cities, and man, I don't know what the dates are. Some of them allude to the possibility of them being quite old, but there's, they're finding mounds and stone circles and things like that in the middle of the fucking rainforest. And one thing, and this is not so ancient. This is just back during the like the Spanish conquest of the famous journey of this conquistador band. I forget who was leading them down the Amazon from Peru to try to reach the ocean. And they said that they just passed through villages where it looked like tens of thousands of people were living, and then they would go and like ransack shit, whatever, and make it out to the coast. And like, they barely survived, but they, with their reports and everything, I think it was like a priest or something tried to come down X amount of years later, and it was just had been ravaged by smallpox, and like, it was just like everything had been kind of overgrown, and it was like, it seemed to have been not what they were describing.
Yeah, I heard something very similar to that. Yeah, like basically, the conquistadors came through the Amazon, killed people, or maybe didn't kill people, but just left them with smallpox. And by the time the next explorers were able to come back, like 40, 50, 60 years later or something, the cities had already been just overgrown by the forest, like that quickly. What is the name of the city of gold? What is that?
El Dorado?
El Dorado, yeah, that's
El Dorado.
That's essentially what that myth is
Yeah,
that there was a city just filled with gold, and it might still be out there, but it's just covered by the rainforest.
Dude, there's this book that if you start reading, I bet you won't put it down till you're done. It's called The Lost City of Z. And it's a journaling of what's his name? I have to look it up. I'm so bad with names today. It's a movie. Don't watch the movie because it's one of those movies where it's good, but they just try to cover too much ground in too short a time. Percy Fawcett. He was a famous British explorer, and he was in the Amazon, and he found like an ancient city supposedly, but was like near to the point of death. His crew was being badly attacked by natives and stuff, and so they had to leave. And he went back a series of trips over the period of like 20, 30 years. And like his last trip, he never came out. Him and his son never came out, but he was like determined and set. He's like, I found El Dorado. And so it's like The Lost City of Z is just about Percy Fawcett, his life and his adventures and documentation through the Amazon. And it is fucking some of the gnarliest shit I'll ever fucking hear people do. Like, it makes me feel like such a little bitch boy.
That's interesting. So what's the book called again?
Lost City of Z.
Lost City of Z.
And they describe how the rainforest in its seemingly lush like capacity to carry so much life is they're calling it like a desert. They're like, you can't find food, you can't find anything, bugs are just berating you the whole time. People are dying of infectious diseases, like the natives are hostile, like
yeah,
just like crazy.
Well, it's like the other side of the coin to the desert. Those are just two extremes. You know what I mean? Extreme heat and just lack of food versus the Amazon and the rainforest, where like there is so much food there, like there's so much life, but pretty much everything inside of there is trying to kill you.
I mean, this book made it sound like it had become pretty hard to find food, and they had to basically survive off rations, and then there's a few points where a few trips they had befriended and spent time in certain communities. And so they would, as they're getting forest, they could go to these tribes and hang out with them. And they describe this thing called black gold, which is also something that Graham Hancock talks a lot about. And it's this special soil that these Native Americans had been making, which just helps them grow the food they need, because apparently the soil, it's hard to find good soil in the rainforest because everything is fucking using it up, right? It's basically just a shit ton of vines everywhere, and so much water that everything just fucking drains and flows. Mm-hmm. So they've created their own fertilizer system. And they're like, where does this come from? And they're like, this is just like a thing that we've been doing for thousands of years. And so it's like, wow, this, farming technology that they've had goes way back into their heritage. Also with the use of ayahuasca. It's a bit of a side tangent, but yeah, it's fascinating, man. You should read The Lost City of Z and America Before.
I've read excerpts and chapters of America Before, but I actually haven't read the entire book. I've listened to some podcasts with Graham Hancock sort of promoting that book and getting in depth and talking about it. But yeah, that's definitely one that I want to pick up and, get an actual copy of and read the whole thing. But there's just not enough time, man. There's too many books. There's too many things to learn. There's too many things to read about. It just gets overwhelming at a certain point. Like, I'm in the middle of 3 books right now, and just don't have the time to just be able to sort of finish them out. And yeah, it'll be.
What books are these?
So I'm still reading. What's it called? The Immortality Key by Stephen Murarescu, or no, Brian Murarescu. And then I'm also still reading Prehistory of Psychedelia. Can't remember who that's by. And then for fun, I'm reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy again.
Nice.
But it's been like a week since I've been able to pick up any of those books, which is frustrating, but it is what it is.
Well, I mean, is it just because you've been busy with life?
Yeah, busy doing stuff. So at least it's like I have an excuse.
Yeah.
But it's still I don't know. I wish I spent more time at the end of the night just reading instead of, watching YouTube or watching Netflix or something. Yeah. Even though sometimes you kind of need that break and just be able to sort of shut your brain off and just let, the entertainment do the thinking for you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you kind of need that, but yeah, I don't know. It's whatever. I'm not kicking myself in the ass for it, but I wish I spent more time reading. It's the same thing. I wish I spent more time playing guitar.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah. It is what it is. So we were talking about that soil, that black soil. Yeah, that's super interesting, and that's like, I kind of view that as invention by necessity, where like they had that those tribes who figured that out had to figure it out, otherwise they would not be tribes around anymore. And yeah, necessity is like, that's the true pusher of innovation and invention of things. When it's truly is life or death, like this is where we live. We need to figure out how we can make this sustainable and be able to sort of have a real society grow out of this, as opposed to just being separate hunter-gatherer tribes. So I feel like figuring out that soil technique, and I think they used the burning of tree limbs and like sort of a slow burn, not like a quick hot flame, but like more of a smoldering kind of burn to extract all of the nutrients and the carbon out of sort of plant material and tree material in order to sort of mix that in. And then that the biome that created fertile soil. If you don't have bacteria and organisms living in the soil, it's not gonna foster any sort of agriculture. So then figuring that out in such a desolate but also nutrient rich area is pretty fascinating.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. Yeah,
that's probably one of the key things that led them to be able to create a quote unquote advanced culture or an established culture in such a harsh place. And also perfect camouflage. Essentially, like, your defenses, if you live in a rainforest, nobody's going to be able to fuck with you because you're in this place that nobody can survive, but you figured out how to survive there. So you're essentially protected purely by your environment, which is also kind of interesting. Because, I mean, in history, we did that artificially by building castles and building walls and fortifying cities and stuff like that. But to have the natural protection of just the environment that you have figured out how to thrive in, who's going to come and take you out? Nobody. The Visigoths aren't going to do shit. The Vikings coming over in the 1400s, they're not going to be able to make it down there and survive. They're Vikings.
And the interesting fact is too, it's like that rainforest, like the people who have been growing up living in it for thousands of years have built up immune systems to the region's viruses and bacteria. And so, I mean, and unfortunately, when Europe came over, the smallpox ravaged the population, right? But like, you see the Vikings going through the fucking forest. I'm sure they get ravaged by malaria, you know. But then the indigenous would probably get ravaged by smallpox too. So it's just like chemical war, not chemical, biological, microscopic warfare, not warfare, just
unintentional warfare.
Yeah.
Like it still had the same result, but without the intention of like, oh, we're gonna wipe out this population with a new disease. Because they didn't know even what a disease was. Well, and so I was sort of thinking about this. When you go through Graham Hancock's work, there's a lot of evidence pointing towards a civilization that was, potentially wiped out in more South America, Central America, and even more recently, more recently relatively, but like the Maya and the Aztecs. Yet we don't ever really see that kind of, established, centralized, located, sort of city-based societies really anywhere in North America. Yeah,
there's like one or two they're not super ancient. There was like the hilltop Indians of the Midwest, um, and then the Anasazi. But that I think the Anasazi were like 1000 AD, more or less.
Yeah, so still more in that kind of recent time.
Yeah, it's very interesting because it's like the Midwest is an extremely fertile ground. You'd imagine that they would build up big populations there, but
that there would be like an agricultural, because for the most part, most Native American tribes were somewhat nomadic. A lot of them would follow the buffalo herds around, across the plains. There wasn't a Machu Picchu of North America. I mean, there is some stonework that has been found and some groundwork. I can't remember what it's called, but there's I want to say it might be around your location in the Carolinas, but there's a huge groundwork that's called like something about a Snake Hill.
That's in Ohio. Yeah, I'm
trying
to find that right now. Yeah.
Okay. But there isn't a Machu Picchu. There aren't these pyramidal structures of the Aztecs.
No, yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of interesting because, going back to the Younger Dryas impact theory, it's stated that it's most likely to have occurred largely in the North American ice cap, which first of all went almost half the way down through, America as a country. But then if there was this catastrophic event, these just giant 1,000-foot floods washing over the land, it would wash away any of that evidence of that
fuck shit up.
Yeah, so maybe that's why we only see that evidence of this kind of like really ancient society in more of the South America, Central America region, because they were just slightly farther away from just that initial impact and initial sort of flooding and catastrophe that happened during the Younger Dryas.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, that's a great connection.
Thank you.
And what's his name? Randy Carlson, talk about how up in the Northwest you see these hills that essentially just look like giant wave ripples. And it's like you can see how the earth is very potentially been formed from just like massive cataclysmic flooding happening, and to attach that to a lot of ancient civilizations, like pre-Diluvian or Diluvian myths, from all the ones that you have out in North America and, South American, Central American tribes to, Judaisms with, Noah's Ark. And I think Egypt has a Diluvian myth. And it's like, it's really makes you start to begin to wonder like about, civilization at the time of the Younger Dryas and where it was,
Yeah, that is something, and this actually kind of ties back in perfectly what I wanted to wrap back around to. It is, if it is a coincidence, it has to be the most remarkable coincidence ever recorded, that nearly every culture that has been around for any millennia has a story about a world-destroying flood.
Yeah.
Like if that's a coincidence, then like that's a crazy coincidence. Like even Native Americans that tribes that are based out of South Dakota, Minnesota, Wyoming, places where you would think there would never be a catastrophic flood. Like it's not like on the coastline. The fact that they even have these sort of world-ending flood myths, and obviously Noah's Ark, and basically set in Middle East and within the Mediterranean realm, for them to have that, and the idea that Noah's Ark ended up on Mount Sinai, or was it Mount Sinai, or is that where Moses got?
I think so. Yeah.
I don't know. Either way, the fact that there's all these cultures all saying essentially what's the same quote unquote myth, if it's a coincidence, it seems like a pretty remarkable coincidence. But that brings me back to something that I've been sort of looking into a little bit in the past like year or something of, Graham Hancock brings this up all the time, the idea of Atlantis, and that Atlantis might have been a real place. And it's not the Disney cartoon idea of Atlantis where there's fucking mermaids living in a city at the bottom of the sea. It's also not necessarily the idea that there was a giant island in the middle of the Atlantic that actually magically sunk into the ground. It's more of an idea that there might have been a seafaring culture, a globalistic kind of culture that existed during the Ice Age, and then potentially happened to be below that 400 foot water line that just got sort of encompassed by the dramatic, watershed off of the ice sheets. And I was watching some stuff and like reading into some people have talked about the potential of this place called the Eye of the Sahara, also called the Ricat structure, in Africa. It's on like the western side of the Sahara Desert. But what's interesting about it is it seemingly naturally has the exact right did Danny just leave? There he is, back again.
Sorry about that. My Wi-Fi shot out there.
Oh, no worries. No big deal. I was just in the middle of like building to a very grandiose point. That's all good.
The global seafaring trading economy.
Yeah, that's what I was sort of building up, and then you kind of fucked up the build, but it's all good. Okay, it's all good.
Do it again. I want to hear it.
I was building up and I was building up and I was building up, and then all of a sudden, like, oh no, my partner's gone. But it's fine.
Yeah,
it's fine. This is why we have editing. I'm just fucking with you. What was I going to? Oh, so the Ricat structure. I'll see if I can send you a photo of it or something, or maybe you can look it up. But it's perfectly proportioned to exactly what Plato describes as Atlantis, of having 2 rings of land surrounded by 3 rings of water, and it's X amount of, what did they say, cubits back in the day? I think that was Noah's Ark. But whatever, when you translate the distances, it ends up being exactly what Plato describes, and it's in this place that and even the surrounding area is, Atlantis was described of having mountains to the north with rivers. At the Ricat structure, there are mountains to the north that have evidence of rivers from tens of thousands of years ago. And it opens to the sea to the south, which when you play with those water levels in like Google Maps, it ends up lining up perfectly.
Where's this city?
It's not a city. It's in Western Sahara, Africa.
Huh. What's it called?
The Ricat structure, Richat.
Oh, I see it. Whoa.
Yeah. So I've seen a lot of evidence that points to this. I mean, I wish I could do an in-depth actual sort of breakdown on like all of the different evidence. Maybe that'll be for another podcast. But it's exactly the same structure. It's the same size as is described. It's essentially in the right location because it's west of the Pillars of Hermes, right?
Yeah.
The Straits of Gibraltar, which is how it's described by Plato. So yeah, that's an interesting idea of like, yeah, maybe this actually was a real place and we're potentially looking for it in all the wrong places.
I think it's trippy as fuck.
Yeah. And supposedly it's a natural formation because there's a sort of a volcanic, there's volcanic activity underneath the crust that occasionally bubbles up and starts forcing material outwards and sort of creates that, that circular kind of that shape to it. But
I wonder, well, so then maybe that was its downfall. Like they find this natural formation, they build their successful city on it, but then, bites them in the ass when the volcano blows.
Right. Or maybe it was the Younger Dryas episode.
Yeah, that's true.
And that maybe it was a combination of the two. I mean, you never know. This is all speculation, obviously.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, all archaeology is. It's just all speculation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's trying to draw inferences from very little evidence, and it's kind of the archaeologist's best guess at sort of what happened.
Yeah.
Now, there's no definitive answers when you're kind of looking at this stuff, but it's still very fun to sort of contemplate. Like, what if Atlantis was a real place? Like, that'd be cool.
Yeah. I think that'd be very cool. I was always curious if Teotihuacan was what Plato might have been talking about. But
oh yeah.
The expanse of the sea makes that one kind of far-fetched.
Yeah, you kind of run into the same problem with the Rikat structure, the Eye of the Sahara. It's a little bit inland, and it's technically right now 1,500 feet above sea level. But then also, I think Randall Carlson talks about, I want to say the correct terminology is isostatic depression. So when you have so much ice in sort of one area and so much mass on the land, the actual continental shelf will sort of tip and sway. So that can affect, the ground elevations or the elevation above sea level for a lot of different parts, because all of the continental shelves are at least somewhat connected. So if you have one that's being depressed, it's going to raise up some others. If you have one that's being depressed, then there's a sort of a seesaw kind of action to it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who knows exactly what? I mean, the world 12,000 years ago had to have looked so different to what it did today, or what it does today.
Yeah. Big time.
Did you see that they found human footprints in the Americas somewhere that date back to like 26,000 years ago?
I did not know, but I know of a bunch of evidence that of human activity that predates the Clovis crew model, or whatever it's called. Where did they find these footprints?
I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, so dating to 23,000 years ago, which is clearly by far, I think Clovis is 11,000 years ago, somewhere in that range.
Right. Yeah.
But that's concrete evidence against that sort of idea that the Americas were only populated during the very end of that last, stretch of the Ice Age before the Younger Dryas.
And it the whole Barren Strait, it puts into a debate the whole Barren Strait theory of, well, a handful of people migrated across the Bering Strait, and eventually a bunch of them all made it all the way down to Chile. It's like,
and I mean,
and there's DNA differences between certain populations in South America and North America, where North America is definitely more Asiatic with like Morocco, China, Russia kind of space, but then South America has a lot of South Pacific and Southeastern Asian DNA.
Yeah, and Denisovan.
And Denisovan, yeah.
Denisovan DNA, which is that sort of sub-Saharan Africa, Aboriginal, Polynesian kind of DNA, which is only found, like you said, in the South American indigenous people. Which, how did they get there? How did that group of people, if mainstream archaeology, I don't want to say mainstream archaeology because then I just sound too much like Graham Hancock, because he says that all the fucking time. But if what we were sort of taught in schools, that everyone crossed over the Bering Land Bridge all roughly at the same time over the span of maybe 2,000-3,000 years, how is it that this one set of DNA that's located, farther south on the globe, how did they go all the way up through Asia, East Asia, and through Russia, across the Bering Land Strait, and then they just kept going and everyone else stopped? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So the theories have to be changed with more incoming evidence. And there's a very distinct lineage or a genetic association with that sort of Denisovan, Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia DNA ending up in Chile. And also Easter Island and Hawaii were populated for thousands of years.
Yeah.
How did anybody end up on those islands if there wasn't a seafaring culture that was able to, cross the ocean?
Is it Easter Island that's like the most isolated place on Earth? Like, and there's those monolithic statues.
It's the one point. It's the farthest away from any other landmass of like pretty much any point on Earth, I think.
Yeah.
How do people end up showing up there? And if these are that sort of primitive hunter-gatherer kind of population, how did they survive on a tiny island like Easter Island, where you can't hunt for your food and you can't gather all the food that you need? And then
they have there's some pretty fucked up shit about Easter Island that's like coming to light, that like in building their statues, they deforested the island and had and then they had a huge famine, and then tribes started resorting to cannibalism on the fucking island. And so they were just like, sounds like it's like a really sad, dark story, like the end of Easter Island.
Huh.
Just so isolated.
Hopefully that's not a staunch metaphor for how our society is going to collapse. Because it could.
Ooh,
that's the other thing that always kind of I end up coming back to whenever I think of like the Younger Dryas idea and like an ancient civilization that might have been wiped out. I always come back to how fragile and what a facade and illusion our modern society is. Like, even this right here, this is in my apartment.
Yeah.
Because I have this window closed, in my mind, like, it's a psychological thing of, oh, I feel like I'm safe. The window's closed. Nobody can get in.
Yeah.
When really, there's two panes of glass in between me and the outside. And if anybody really wanted to come in, and if shit really did hit the fan, this isn't going to protect anything.
Damn. You from Colorado?
Danny's talking.
Hold on, I got some Colorado people that want to come say hi.
He's talking to his fans. All right.
My mini fans.
Oh, all right.
Easter Island.
Easter Island.
Cannibalism. Your window.
Yeah, dude. Well, there's still cannibalistic tribes today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which, okay.
Gnarly, man.
Are we just going to get into cannibalism for a little bit? All right, question. You're in a, what's that movie about, like, the rugby team that crashed in the Andes
Chile?
Mountains?
Whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see that movie, but I know the story.
So, shit hits the fan. You're in a plane crash. You're stranded in the Andes. One of your fucking teammates dies. Do you eat him to stay alive?
I think I do.
Yeah?
He's dead?
Yeah, he's dead. You don't have to kill him. He dies naturally. and you're starving.
Yeah.
I think, dude, obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously. I don't understand. Like, I mean, if it's life or death situation and this is your only hope for survival, I don't understand. I mean, I've casually asked this to friends before, and I've had people just be like, no, absolutely not. Just like, dude, once they're dead, they're essentially making the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah.
So you could potentially live.
Yeah.
Fucking do it.
Yeah.
I've heard it tastes like pork.
I could see that.
We are very anatomically very close to pigs. Okay, all right. Another question.
Especially Americans.
Oh, yeah. Especially the fucking cops, you know what I'm saying? Those goddamn pigs. No. Any cops who might potentially ever listen to this, thank you. Please don't pull me over. Please don't arrest me. No, but a follow-up question. What body part do you eat first?
I don't fucking care. I feel like at that point I'm so hungry. Deltoid? I don't know. Upper arm?
All right.
Breast?
Breast?
Nice pec. Get some of that hearty meat.
A nice, I mean, if it's a woman, a nice milk steak.
If it's a woman, I wouldn't want to eat the breast. Although that fat, I would end up eating it because that fat would be valuable calories.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be really jarring to fucking cook up human and eat it.
Yeah. And especially like, I mean, what if you get saved like 6 hours later?
Oh.
And you wouldn't have even died, but you still went for it. How bad would you feel?
That would have sucked.
Yeah,
and I don't think I wouldn't eat it until I was at the point of starvation. So if I was at the point of starvation and I ate it and 6 hours later someone came, I'd be like, well, I was at the point of starvation.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like I had been starving for quite a while.
Yeah.
And I couldn't I had so much, I didn't have enough energy to get up. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know.
I just had the thought of what if you were the first guy? Like if the first person dies and you were the guy who immediately goes to start eating them. Everyone would be like, whoa.
Okay, everybody line up. Yeah.
Have you been thinking about this for a while, dude? And you just finally found your opportunity?
Yeah. He's got like a bib.
Yeah, he's ready. Yeah. As the person's laying there dying, he's got a fucking one of those crab cracker bibs.
Yeah.
He has the crab on it. And he's got a fucking fork and knife ready to go. And then as soon as their heart stops, they just start chopping off parts. This got really morbid. We went into some deep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I haven't heard about that Easter Island stuff, but that's.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't gotten into it, but that's what they say went down.
Well, even like an Easter.
Do you know what Go ahead.
No, after you.
Do you know what the Nazca lines are?
I do, in Peru.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are weird, aren't they?
Those are funky, man.
Why? What purpose do they serve by drawing a monkey in the desert on hilltops? You know what I mean?
That you can only view from an aerial perspective.
Yeah, totally. Like, why? It seems like a lot of work, and I don't see what the benefit would be. I was just rubbing my hands really weird for way too long. What would what would be like the reward for putting in that much effort for moving all of these rocks?
I don't know, man. It's a good question.
Except for aliens.
Of course, right?
Except for aliens, dude.
Hey, aliens, there are monkeys down here. This is what monkeys do.
We sort of kind of touched on this ish a little bit last episode, but or at least around the idea of it, but like I think aliens are sort of the new god of today's culture. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of a replacement because we've gotten so much more secular. You know, there's the quote, what is it? The God of the gaps, where anything science can't explain for us, we explain by God.
Alien.
I think aliens are kind of maybe moving into that category.
You're moving into that category. They've been in that category for a while.
Yeah,
how do you explain this? Aliens, bro.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Like, I don't know what's going on. So it's probably
because of the
aliens.
show Ancient Alien, anything that's like a mystery from the ancient world, fill in the gaps, aliens, bro.
Yeah. Which, yeah, same kind of idea. It's like, it seems like a cop-out. Of like, I can't...
Dude, that show went so hard, it just milked the teat out of everything.
I can't believe it went... It was on air for like fucking 12 seasons or something.
Yeah, something crazy like that.
They have like... They honestly have like maybe 6 episodes worth of evidence that's actually like compelling. And that's even... I'm being generous. I'm being generous as fuck when I say 6 episodes of evidence that's compelling. And they stretched it out for 12 seasons.
Yeah.
Who's that guy with the crazy hair?
The
or something?
Guy, I don't know his name.
The classic fucking the meme of just aliens.
Yeah.
Giorgio Thamolopoulos or some fucking Greek ass name. The most Greek fucking name you can possibly.
Giorgio Thamolopoulos.
It's something like that. I know it's Giorgio something, and there's got to be an Opolopoulos in there somewhere.
Giorgio Thomopoulos. No, that's not him. I tried it. It's not. That guy. I think he's one of like the producers of the show. So that dude made a shit ton of money off the History Channel and off of culture's fascination with the alien and just.
He's Giorgio A. Sokolos.
Nice.
I mean, so still just as Greek as it could possibly be.
Yeah, very, very much.
Yeah, that's always been one of those shows. Like I've watched it plenty. I very much enjoy watching it, but it's also I'm throwing out 95% of this. This is just fun shit to hear and fun shit to talk about.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like I view it the same way that I view reading something like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Like this is just a fun adventure we're going to go on, and we're going to play make-believe for the next hour and listen to these fucking people who are out of their mind come up with theory after theory after theory. And it's just like, this is just entertaining to me.
Yeah.
I would love to see the demographic of people who actually watch that show, even remotely sober. It has to be like 0 to 1%.
Yeah.
That is exclusively a show designed for a turkey leg shaped doobie. And then it's fucking great.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the only time when it's fun.
And that's Giorgio's whole plan. He was like, all right, turkey leg joint episodes, every episode.
Yeah.
We got to find some cool ancient building. We got to relate it to fucking aliens and mythology. Let's go. It's actually a dynamite idea.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like one of the things that they sort of do a good job on, or at least they ask a question, they ask the wrong questions, and they also do that, by the way. They don't ever make statements. They just like, could it be that ancient aliens actually visited and taught the Egyptians how to build a pyramid? They never actually come out with a legitimate statement.
Oh yeah, it's always exactly.
They're always
grounded in
hypotheticals. Yeah. But one thing that I do appreciate is some of the essential questions that they sort of bring up are sort of unable to be explained by a lot of sort of, current science. Like a lot of the stone sculptures in South America, especially the ones where like it looks like the rocks are sort of melted into the crevices of each other, and even just Machu Picchu. How did this so-called primitive culture be able to drag up all of these, hundreds of ton boulders and stones up to the very top of like a 12 or 13,000 foot peak? So that's one thing that is kind of interesting that they do, is they kind of point out the fact that there isn't a lot of like detailed explanations for a lot of this stuff that, we're taught in school and social studies and whatever. I think they just picked the wrong answers because they're just asking questions. Some ancient alien theorists believe. It's like, okay. That's also a pussy way to go about it.
Yeah.
At least come out and just say, like, Graham Hancock comes out and he says, I think it's an ancient civilization that was wiped out. He at least puts his fucking cards on the table and says, this is what I think. Whereas Ancient Aliens has that kind of cop out by saying, like, I don't know, man. We're just asking questions. I don't know.
Yeah. And it's hilarious that they're on the History Channel. Or I guess it's not hilarious. I think it's just hilarious how that channel is called the History Channel.
Yeah.
When clearly.
It's almost become ironic at this point.